But we are going to move on to a theist caller named Caleb from Ohio, goes by he, him. Caleb wants to talk about, or has a question rather, can science and religion go together? What an interesting and very broad topic. I'm sure there's a lot to pack in there. We are going to talk to Caleb. So without further ado, you are on, Caleb, with Richard and Jimmy. How can we help you?
This wasn't kind of a question. I just wanted to, I mean, I guess it was a question, like the whole topic in itself that I was asking, but, so I've never actually called this show before. I've called the Atheist Experience, stuff like that. But anyway, so like, I feel like that, I'm just going to get right into this. So I feel like that you got, like, atheists sometimes can, like, make it look like that if you believe in religion or believe in, like, because, like, I'm a Christian, like if you believe in that, because like Christianity is like the big religion in America, so like you're believing in something that believes in that's like unrealistic or magic, stuff like that. Because I've heard the word magic used so much when like referred to religion and stuff. I feel like that religion and science can go together because in the theistic belief, we believe that God is the creator. Like if God created everything, he just created science. We feel like, oh well, miracles. Well, if God created the universe, he can violate its laws, and it's not like a you know.
I'm not sure that you really gave us like a clear explanation. So, and forgive me, I'm not trying to be harsh. First of all, thank you for calling. Being a theist and calling, our shows is it could be a pretty big deal. So I just want to say thanks for taking that leap. Thanks for calling the Atheist Experience. But more importantly, when it comes to science and religion going together, I don't think the term magic is really like a negative term that we're using. It's breaking down the way that religion says things happen is akin to the type of magic that we might expect from a magician. There's no really good answer to describe how it happens, and quite the contrary when it comes to showing how things really work. So if you were to give me an example of maybe showing how religion and science go together and it's not just magic, maybe we can speak a little bit more pointedly on that topic. So is there something specific that we could just dive right into?
Well, yeah, I think that we could go for the Bible. There's several things like the Bible. A lot of people.
That is also a very big, very broad selection. You know what I mean? To just say, go ahead, but hear me out. Just saying the Bible, I think we need to whittle it down even more than that.
Well, I was about to say, like a lot of people will say in Isaiah, I think it's like 44:22 or something like that. Like it says, a lot of people use that to say that Christians believe the earth is flat, but you can clearly tell from the context that's not being literal. But there's another area in Job that talks about cloud, like it refers to the earth as like being round, like a sphere.
Okay.
People back then believed that the earth was being carried by a turtle or like some large animal that could have been carrying it at that time. Job's a very old book. But
well, yeah, I mean, Genesis is an even older book, apparently, perhaps. And, Genesis describes a world that is incredibly different from the way that we understand the world. So, I mean, if you want to talk about geology, you want to talk about maybe astronomy or the atmosphere of the earth, the way that we use science, because, again, science is not like a doctrine, if you will. Science is a method of explaining things. And the way that we use science to define the world that we live in is incredibly different than the way that the Bible describes the world. And so in that context, no, science, the methodology that we use to explain the world, cannot go with the doctrine of Christianity. And that's where I would start there. Now, I will say this. Go ahead, Caleb.
Like, what exactly are you saying? Like, I know in Genesis it talks about, like, creation, stuff like that, but, like, is that what you're talking about? Like, what exactly is there in Genesis that is, like, different than what we observe in the world today?
Yeah, you know what? I can probably recite this by heart. Richard, you sound like you want to say. You seem like you want to say something. So, real quick, I'm going to kick it over to you. But I want to point out the dome. I want to point the two lights in the dome. I want to point out the waters separating. All that stuff. So, Richard, if you will, take it away.
Yeah, no disrespect to the great Jimmy Jr., but I don't think we even need to go there because I talk to a lot of theists, not just Christians, all the time who claim that science backs up their particular religious belief, and they will point to things as you have done, like the world is round. So what? That's not a claim being made by your religion that is demonstrating that it has scientific knowledge. What that is first of all, for a large part of when these books were written, that knowledge was already held that the Earth was a sphere in many ancient cultures. So it's not particularly a surprise that people in the same area, or in certainly in the area where they had communication and trade routes with these people, will have come across that knowledge. We have to make the distinction. This is really, really important because we have Hindus saying that their books contain scientific facts, Muslims saying the Quran contains scientific facts, Christians saying the Bible contains scientific facts. And it really doesn't fucking matter whether they contain scientific facts because correlation is not causation. Having there was a great quote, and I forgot it was by a philosopher, and I forget who the guy was, but he made a great quote about how falsifiability, and the quote went something along the lines of, you can accidentally stumble upon the truth. And but that doesn't mean that you followed the proper process of finding the truth. Accidentally having an idea that corresponds with the truth is irrelevant unless you can show. And this is why methodology is so important. How that is actually being put into practice. You can say that the world is round and the Bible contained this information, but is there any kind of established theories, any established hypothesis put forward in the Bible that are falsifiable, that show how to work out how the world is round, that say the world is round because of this reason, we have laid down this hypothesis and confirmed it? No, there isn't. And that, is the fact that the Bible contains things which happen to be true proof that that Christianity is true? Because if so, you'd also have to say that the Upanishads are true, the Quran is true, because it contains stuff which happens to be true. And we need to make this distinction. It is a very important distinction to be made, that unless you can actually show the workings, show you're working out, as the person who's just sent us the super chat, Scott Dickey, will often say, show you're working. You've got to be able to show you're working out. And just by throwing out there that it contains some information which happens to be true, I'm sure many Spider-Man comics contain information about New York City, which is true. It doesn't mean Spider-Man exists in reality. So I'm going to let you respond to me, Caleb. Then I am going to let Jimmy get to what he wanted to say. I'm not going to dismiss him out of hand completely. But I've been talking for a while. I want you to respond, Caleb.
I don't feel dismissed. I appreciate that, though. Caleb, go ahead.
Okay, well, when I was talking about the Earth thing, when I was talking about like the Earth being round, that wasn't like my main thing. The only reason why I was saying that is because it's something that I feel like is commonly used, like not by like you guys or anything, but I've just heard before, like the reason why the Bible, like one of the reasons why like the Bible was written a while ago, and it contains things like saying the Earth is flat and stuff like that, and just contains all these different things that are so unscientific. And so the reason why I said that, I wasn't like my main evidence that I was using for the Bible, but I was just rather showing that the Bible does not go with something that is against science. And I know that, like, you could say, like, well, in Genesis, God created people out of the ground. What do you mean? But that was because God was creating people. And if God created the universe, then there is supernatural. But anyway.
Right. Right, but so that in itself, Caleb, is a big claim, because for you to say, well, God was creating people and that's how he created them, again, you need to show your work, right? And so that's where Richard was going.
Sure.
And so I would ask you, if there's something in the Bible that you wholeheartedly believe, then the question is, well, how is it scientifically possible? And let's try and find a way to say, yes, science can go along with religion, because I fail to see any circumstances where that's possible. I mean, I don't. That's a sweeping statement. I don't want to say any, but I fail to see circumstances where the work is shown, where this magic, if you will, is scientifically proven. So, what are your thoughts there?
Like, are you talking about like show my work? Like when you're talking about show my work, stuff like that, are you talking about like evidences maybe?
Well, Caleb, you said that God, didn't you just say that God created people out of dirt? Or I mean, are you, is that a claim? Because I heard you say, well, that's just what God was doing. Did I mishear you, or?
Well, no, I was talking about in Genesis.
Right. And you believe that, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I believe in Christianity. There's good reason to believe that God does exist. I believe there's good evidences out there.
All right. Well, my point is, though, that if your claim is that God created people from dust, where does that comport with reality from how we understand the world? Do we see other people or other things being created from dust? And then why does religion get this special place to say, well, it's not true anywhere else, it's not demonstrable anywhere else, but when it comes to Genesis, this is the way that it's demonstrable? And then you would have to show us, okay, how do we know that?
See, this is what I was saying. I was saying I'm saying if for you guys, because like one time I used the word if, and then people were saying things about me in the comments. But anyway, so I'm saying,
it doesn't matter.
Guys, I believe God. So it's like if God exists, then he would be able to do that, because there was a point probably.
But that again, so Caleb, I'm sorry, I don't want to keep jumping in, but like I want you to talk, but if you're going to talk and then make a sweeping claim and then quickly move on, I have to stop there, because you said if God created everything, then he could do that, and then proceeded to talk. But that requires evidence. That kind of claim requires evidence. I can't just let you carry on.
So that's what I was saying. Like I was saying, like if God exists, which I believe that there's evidence that God does exist, and I was saying that if God did exist, then he could create everything from nothing. And then
how do you know that?
We don't see this today. Well, there you go. Like, what about your own theory that you believe in evolution? We don't observe a biogenesis happening.
Hang on, Caleb. We've done a massive leap here from you kind of talking about science and religion being compatible to what if-ism. You know, you've just said, you've just stated at least twice that I heard you say, you know, there is evidence for God's existence. You don't present that evidence by jumping on and saying, well, what about this other thing? You know, if you've let's talk about the evidence for God's existence.
Okay. Yes. Man, I was going to do this. Okay. Anyway, so evidence for God. So first off, I'm getting some of my information from I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist by Frank Turek and Norman Geisler.
Oh God.
But anyway.
Is that the bar you've stooped to, quoting Frank Turek? Go on then. Let's have it. Go on.
No, hold on. Why do you say oh and then say God if you don't believe that there's a God, or like you don't believe there's sufficient evidence for God? Like, cause
I have seen Frank Turek talk on numerous occasions, and every single one of his arguments is a straw man against atheism and people who are not religious. But give us the evidence. You've told us you've got evidence for God. Give us that evidence.
Well, we know the universe isn't infinite, and so that means the universe had a beginning. And since the universe had a beginning, and there was a point when there was no natural law, that means the universe couldn't have come into existence naturally. And also, you were talking about like the Bible really quick. I'd just like to throw in there.
Right.
The Bible does say.
Let me stop you there. We don't know the cosmos
That's right.
Right. Okay. So when we're talking about the universe, we're talking about the local representation of the universe. When people like Frank Turek say the universe couldn't be eternal, they're not talking about the universe itself. They're talking about past time, because there are hypotheses out there that there is an eternal past. And it's that we're talking about. We're not talking about the current universe being eternal in the past. Nobody thinks that. We're talking about the cosmos as a whole that could be eternal in the past. There is nothing, absolutely nothing, that says this cannot be the case. That is not a scientific point you're making. That is not evidence you're making. That's rhetoric that's been thrown out there, which you're reading from Frank Turek and other lousy apologists such as him. So let's get with the... You have evidence for God's existence. What is that evidence? Not something is impossible, which isn't impossible, by the way. Let's talk about what the evidence is for God's existence.
Well, pretty much what the argument states is that, because you see the universe, like, and you talk about like the cosmos and themselves being infinite, like the Big Bang is one of the leading theories on how the universe could have been created. And the Big Bang states, and we see from expanding, that the universe was put in a very, very small space, and this was where it's said to be where time began and stuff like that. And so we know there's a beginning. We also know there couldn't have been infinite, because the second law of thermodynamics, which says that if something's infinite, it requires an infinite amount of energy to run that, like your car runs out of...
No, because we have an infinite amount of energy. That is what the singularity from basically the singularity from which the universe came is where all known physics breaks down. What we have, as far back as we can go, we know that there was a state of infinite density and temperature which started expanding. So we have that infinite energy contained there. That is where it's contained. It is possible. So you can't just hand wave it away, because it is there. It is contained in that singularity.
Well, even that energy ends up running. Like, haven't you heard the cosmic rebound theory? I mean, I don't believe the cosmic rebound theory, but like that even states that like there was a Big Bang, but then it could have collapsed back in on itself, and then there will be another one.
Yeah, so these are different hypotheses. We're not talking about the different cosmological hypotheses. We're talking about evidence for God.
That's right. That's right. And Caleb, you haven't really given us that. You're kind of jumping around. And what I think you were getting at, and correct me if I'm wrong, was that there had to be a beginning, therefore God was at the beginning. Is that where you're going?
Sort of, but not like that. I was going to give other things for it.
All right. Well, but I mean, if that's the end goal, okay, if that's the conclusion you're going to land on, that the universe had to have a beginning, and therefore I believe in God because of that beginning. How do we know that God is responsible? Go ahead.
Like other things, like the New Testament documents, like you'd be like, well, why God? Isn't this the God of the gaps fallacy? We're saying we don't know how the universe could have, if there was nothing, if there was a beginning, we don't know how the universe could have, if there was no natural law or anything, we don't know how the universe could have come into existence. So you're just putting God there. But that's not the case. It's based off of, if they're literally from what we see and from what we observe, and we don't see things coming out of nothing, out of thin air or whatever.
Nobody thinks, nobody has said, nobody thinks, no atheist that I know of, no cosmologist thinks that the universe came from an absolute nothing. This is not a thing. This is another one of Turek's strawman arguments that he throws out there. Stop reading Frank Turek, because he's doing you no favors in these arguments. Why do you think that we think that the universe comes from nothing?
I didn't say you thought it came from nothing. I'm just saying that if it had a beginning, then it's logical that there was a starting point, to think that there was a starting point.
Yes, we know there was a starting point. It was the expansion of the universe. We know that occurred.
And why is that equated to God? Why is the starting point? Why is the universe having a beginning the same as God starting the universe?
Well, we get the idea of God because And it's just saying, for one thing, the reason why I believe it's Christianity above all things is because I believe that the text from
We've not even got to God yet. Never mind Christianity.
Yeah,
Let's stick
we
with God
can't-
first. Let's not run before we can walk.
And please, hey, Caleb, I just want to let you know something. You got me and Richard, who kind of know what we're talking about when it comes to ancient religions that predate Christianity. So just be careful, because we're going to have to tell you where Christianity comes from and all that stuff. And let's just get to God. Let's just get to the evidence of God.
I've been talking about of the beginning. Okay, sorry. I kind of lost where I was, but I remember now. So anyway,
Okay.
I was talking about God and why is it God above all other causes. And so I was saying, though, that since I believe that, and I'd like, by the way, after this, for you to talk about, like, you talking about predating Christianity and stuff like that. So
let's stick to the topic. Let's evidence for God,
let's
Caleb.
stick to the topic and let's stick specifically to the evidence. Because you said there was evidence. Let's stick specifically to the evidence.
I'll go off talking about something, like I'll like add something to it, and you guys will cut me off because you think I'm trying to go on to a whole nother topic, but I'm not. I was just saying, by the way, afterward, I'd like you to say this because you made a claim. That's all.
I know you started going into, well, this is why I think it's Christianity, and we're jumping all around because we have asked you to show evidence for God, right? And then you started talking about the universe not being or the universe not being eternal and having a beginning and equating that to God. Okay, so show us the evidence. Well, the reason you believe it's Christianity, and I had to stop you there and say, look, let's not jump right into Christianity. Let's still get the evidence that we've been asking for. Because if you start going down a road where you're talking about why Christianity is the preferred choice, then Richard and I have kind of an arsenal of historical anecdotes to show you that Christianity actually comes from other places. And I'm warning you that we don't want to go down that road either. I am just saying, please, because I want you to give us what you called in for, and that is the evidence of God. That's why, because you can't call in and take time away from our crew and our hosts and our viewers and say that you're going to do something and then change topics. I'm putting up roadblocks in these different paths you want to go down because you made a claim and now you have to give us the evidence. Okay, and I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm a little frustrated at this point. I mean, Richard's asked you several times.
Okay, so why is it God though? So my point was the universe had a starting point. The universe had a beginning. Now, why is it God that
right?
The outside cause couldn't have been an inward cause. And so I'm saying, why could it be God? Well, because for one thing, what else could it be? Like, if Christianity is true, like Jesus really did, rise from the dead, stuff like that, the texts are true.
So, right, I'm going to stop you again, and I know you're going to get with this, but this is really important. You've jumped straight into an argument from incredulity when you've been asked for evidence. You said, I'm not committing a God of the gaps fallacy, and then immediately jump into, well, what else could it be?
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you exactly what else it could be. It could be a necessary being which has no intelligence. And that, for what appears to be the case, is what appears to be the case at the moment. We're given the evidence that we have. So why are you telling me that it is something that has intelligence over something that doesn't?
Okay, so you see what I'm trying to do here, and when you've cut me off, said I was changing subjects and stuff like that, is I'm trying to make this connect. What I'm saying is that the universe had a beginning, it had a starting point. I'm saying there couldn't have been an inward cause. Now, I know you guys probably don't believe that, but I'm just saying I think that there could have been an outward cause. And then now I'm saying that if the New Testament is true and Jesus really did do these miraculous things and miracles
I don't give a shit about the New Testament. I give a shit about the evidence and for the claim that you're making. Because all you're doing by saying if Jesus this, if the New Testament this, is adding extra layers to your claim. So we've got this one claim you've made that there's evidence that God created the universe and that God exists. Let's stick with that because it is not helpful adding other layers on top of that.
What I'm saying is that what's our evidence that it could have been God, or that it could have been God? And I'm saying it's the Bible, and it's okay, well, how do you know the Bible is true? That's what I'm trying to go into.
But that's not evidence that God exists. That's the claim that God exists. What is the evidence that God exists? Let's stop. What is your definition of evidence?
My definition of evidence, I guess evidence would be something that, like if there's evidence at a crime scene or something, it's like something of like the past or whatever that we're.
Do you think an evidence of a crime scene is suitable for demonstrating whether something exists or not? Because when you've got a crime scene, you already know that a certain number of factors already exist, and you're trying to find the culprit, which exists. We already know that thing exists. So is cumulative evidence in the case of a crime scene suitable for demonstrating that something exists?
Okay, well, I was looking right here. Like, I even looked up what the definition of evidence is. It's indicating whether a belief or proposition.
There are different definitions of evidence, sir. This is why I'm asking you. There are different definitions of evidence depending on what the claim is that's been made. You can have things like cumulative evidence. You can have things like deductive evidence. It depends what the claim is. If I was wanting to find the culprit to a crime, I'd say that we have cumulative evidence. We take all the factors that we can find and we look at what they are. If we're having evidence for something existing, that has to demonstrate. It can't just suggest that this might be the case on a series of probability, because that doesn't demonstrate that the thing exists. It has to be something which clearly and distinctly, to use philosophical language, demonstrates that to be the case. So it's not sufficient just to say we have this cumulative evidence that points to this thing, because if we can do that with miracle claims in the Bible, we can say, well, miracles occurred in the Bible. For what miracle? Well, Jesus appeared to change water into wine. Well, we've got several different cases of other candidate explanations which are more likely than someone actually turning water into wine, and that coming from God. We've got much more likely, things there which are likely to be the case. So in those cases, we can say that evidence is not sufficient for claiming that God exists. So we need to be very clear and distinct. This is why I asked you what definition of evidence it was you were using.
Okay, I understand that. Can you allow me to say two things, please?
Yeah, I'm quite happy for you to talk. If we need to interrupt, we will.
Okay. Well, I was just saying, for one thing, you were talking about how Bob was trying to change the subject. I went from trying to talk about the Bible and different things that are in there that would, miracles and stuff like that. Like, if those claims are true, then it could point to God. And then once again, I'm even saying could here. And then now we're talking about what the definition of evidence is. So I'm not the one who's trying to change the subject.
I'm not trying to change the subject. I'm trying to clarify the subject. Do you understand why I'm trying to clarify this? If I say to you, right, let me put this in a very black and white way to demonstrate what it is I mean. If I say to you, I am going to take a car to America by driving it to America, from Britain, you would say that is not possible, because a car cannot go from Britain to America by being driven. There's no road systems, cars can't swim or fly. However, if I said I'm going to take a form of transport to America, then this is perfectly plausible. So it's very important when we're saying I have evidence to be very, very clear on what your definition of evidence is, because depending on what definition you are using could change the outcome of the claim completely. This is why it's so very important. We're not attacking you. We're Richard, trying to work with you.
I want to highlight the last thing that he said, and maybe we can find ourselves on the way to some evidence. So, Caleb, you said if the New Testament is true, then God could be real, right? Or something along those lines. So then my question would be, how do we know the New Testament is true? And there is where you have an opportunity to lay out evidence. Okay. So let's say for the New Testament to be true, Jesus would have had to risen from the dead. Okay. What's your evidence for Jesus rising from the dead?
Okay, well, first of all, I'd like to mention that the resurrection is probably one of the most important parts of that, and so that's
it's the cornerstone, the foundation of Christianity. So I already just said that, so now you don't need to say it again. All you need to do is just answer my question, please. How do you know that it's true?
I was just going to, all I was saying was that it says in 1 Corinthians 15:14 that
Caleb, please don't take this opportunity to read scripture to me. Please tell me, because the scripture is the same thing as the claim that Jesus rose from the dead. The whole thing is the claim. I'm taking one piece of the claim and asking you for the evidence, okay? Something that demonstrates it to be true. And I'm asking for that. So to read me another part of the claim, it's not sufficient evidence, okay? I need you to tell me, this is how I know Jesus' resurrection took place.
Okay. So first we get our knowledge from, or we get our knowledge of the past from things like manuscripts and written texts and stuff like that, and archaeology, different things like that. And when it comes to manuscript evidence like the New Testament, we have nearly 6,000 manuscripts, which we are able to reconstruct to see the originals. And so we have a lot of written documentation, and we have a lot of certain things like when it comes to the resurrection, people are like, oh, well, they could have been lying. It's like, oh, they could have been lying, but they weren't even, or at least from what they had written down, they weren't even expecting the resurrection. And so it's like, how do you explain that?
Yeah, well, that's not true either. And we're getting way off topic. I mean, we're getting way off topic. We just need you. You said you could provide evidence, right? You said you had a reason to believe that God was real and Christianity was true. And this is absolutely, we have 7 other callers on the line. Like, we're going to try and get to all of our callers. We're going to do a really quick roulette after that. So for all of our callers that are listening in, we are going to get to you, even if it's quick, but this is the last time that we can do this, Caleb, and I will invite you to call back, but I need you right now to just tell us what's your evidence.
I was going to say what I just now said. I was reading something off of because I kind of got lost in what I was saying. Sorry. But anyway, so what I was saying is that manuscripts and written text are how we get a lot of our like archaeology. It's where we get a lot of our information. It's like we learn.
Sure. Do you want to jump in?
What makes the New Testament documents any different from other documents in history?
They were copied from those ideas. Many ideas in the Bible were copied from religions that came way before them. Okay, especially the Old Testament. So what's that?
Did you defend that?
I could defend it. I could defend the fact that multiple religions had a father figure and a son that was born to defend or protect the people that worshipped them. Okay, we have the Carthaginians that did that. Okay, we have different groups in the Greek religions that did that. There are religions all over the place. We know, Richard mentioned earlier, about people who used trade routes and who interacted with each other, cultures that interacted, that borrowed things from each other. Heck, we could look to languages now, right, and tell where different societies interacted and how they borrowed different pieces of those languages, different thoughts from those religions, and they're all kind of intertwined. That is a subject for like a different conversation, and I can defend that, right? And you know, the little bit of information I've just given you should be enough, should be sufficient for you to know, or for you to be able to understand that Christianity is not unique. Christianity is not at all unique, and all you need to do is give us some evidence to show us how unique it is. And you haven't done that the whole call, right? So I didn't want to come in and jump in and start getting like, you know, passionate or whatever and start kind of ripping you apart. But look, we don't have time for this. And so I'm gonna end up letting you go. I mean, Richard, do you have one last thought for him?
Caleb, I want you to call back next time I'm on the show And I'm going to try and kind of find out when that is very, very quickly now. So just bear with me. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to talk to you. And I'm going to say, because I want to talk to you specifically about the resurrection claim. I really, really do. The next time I'm on is the 12th of next month. The 12th of next month. Please give us a call then. Because I want to talk to you about this resurrection claim. Please do me a favor as well and call in early. You know, we talked about this at the top of the show, and we've got in a position now where we can't give the callers the amount of time that they deserve because everybody's called in at the last minute again. Call the show early. Let's get you the time you deserve. Caleb, I want to have this conversation with you. Please, please, please call in the next time I'm on. And let's talk specifically from the outset about the resurrection, please. And I will look forward to that. In the meantime, I'm going to let you go because we do have callers to get to.